Welcome back, my favorite part of the show. It's almost ending. Yes, it is December 16th, 2015. I'm flanked by a gorgeous, gorgeous young man named Daniel Roth. Aha, threw you off there.
I was getting ready.
Gorgeous, gorgeous.
I already knew. I knew where you were
Yeah,
going.
you knew I was going to that, but yeah, I'm going to get to you in a second. Mike Kremer's back!
Woo!
Hi, high five me, high five. There you go. Never mind you, back to the redhead. Yes, and Daniel Roth of The Economy magazine. You've got some interesting stuff for us today. I'm going to let you start and intro it yourself.
Yes, Egypt, post-revolution.
Yeah, post-revolution. Yeah.
Maybe pre-next revolution.
Pre-next revolution.
That
yeah.
may be the most correct way of saying it. But there's this start-up spirit that we don't hear a lot about. You know, we hear Israel is the start-up nation.
Yes.
Just to the south is Egypt, and it's a much smaller scene, but it's growing, and that spirit is really kind of in that revolutionary fervor, and you can actually see it in the title of this conference that we did the story about.
Lovely.
Called Rise Up.
Rise Up in Egypt. Let's take a look.
In recent years, Egypt has been known more for its political turmoil than its startup scene, but the country is staking a claim in the innovative world of high tech. And over the weekend, the two-day Rise Up Summit in Cairo sought to do just that, assuming the mantle of top entrepreneurship gathering in the Middle East and Africa.
Rise Up is the first summit that invites entrepreneurs and owners of small businesses that are innovative and technologically driven to get in touch with investors, supporters, charity organizations, government entities, or anyone who can present them with services that will help start or grow their businesses.
And people came. 4,000 people from tens of countries were in attendance at this third annual event, making connections, pitching ideas, and developing business. And though the hype surrounding Egypt's tech scene is growing, there's still room to grow more.
I think that there's a ton of business opportunity here. I think in general it's been undercapitalized. In other geographies around the world where we see similar size markets and audiences, there's usually quite a bit more capital at work. So we're optimistic there's going to be more folks jumping into the market, but certainly we're happy and greedy to be jumping in now.
The vision surrounding this event and the growing taste for innovative tech and entrepreneurship is, many hope, something that will lead to a stronger overall economic reality for Egypt.
We're trying to create a supplemental pillar of the Egyptian economy, okay, to be an additional pillar from manufacturing and tourism and the foreign remittances, all the major components of the Egyptian economy. And so we think that startups, and specifically tech startups, can be a major part of the economy going forward.
And the conference seems poised to be a breeding ground for partnerships and ideas. In a country looking to encourage stable economic growth in the 21st century, projects focused on encouraging and investing in startups is one key to success.
It's very hopeful, I think, because as this was rolling, we were discussing the fact that not just after the Russian jetliner was down in the Sinai, Egypt had a lot of income coming from tourism. That's fairly almost dead right now.
Yes.
But the percentage, or the success of high tech, how far away are they from really developing? Is there kind of a startup successful Egyptian one?
There's many, like I said. If you compare Fowry, which was this digital payment system that they had set up, they sold that for $100 million to foreign investors not too long ago. That's huge. But when you compare it to, for example, the Waze sale in Israel for $1 billion, it's much, much smaller. But that's exactly what we're seeing. We're seeing almost a mini version of what's going on in Israel.
Nation in Israel beginning there, and let's hope it works. It's also, as you said, I think the generation of apropos the Arab Spring, the generation of the Arab Spring is the generation of the internet. And they kind of lost their cause. It didn't really succeed, if we're looking at Egypt today.
Without a doubt.
Without a doubt, exactly, thank you. And funneling it to that energy, that type of want for change, amen. And
Absolutely.
What else?
We have, let's say, a much more depressing scenario. Yes.
That's why mine is wearing black.
Moving to the north of us, to Syria, this story about the Damascus Stock Exchange, which is just empty. And
I was about to say, I'm amazed it's still,
there's a few holders on who put money into this exchange in 2009, just a couple of years before their uprising began, which turned into a civil war very quickly. quickly.
Very quickly, and remind people it's almost 5 years to the Arab Spring, which turned into a very, very grim winter in Syria. Let's take a look.
Only a handful of investors still bother to show up at the Damascus Stock Exchange. Mohammed Al-Harki is one of those patiently watching the latest transactions scroll through on an electronic board. He bought several million Syrian pounds in shares when the exchange opened 7 years ago. Today, his losses are considerable.
After the stock exchange opened in 2009, I would come every day to calculate my profits. But since 2011, and with the events that have been unfolding, I now come to calculate my losses. But I keep buying instead of selling, because I still hope to cover my losses one day.
The stock exchange has been hit hard by the conflict ravaging Syria for nearly 5 years. In 2011, millions of shares were traded for a value of 7.8 billion Syrian pounds. By last year, turnover had risen, but their value was more than halved to just 3.3 billion.
بورصة دمشق وكأنها طائرة كانت على مدرج وتستعد للانطلاق.
The Damascus Stock Exchange is like a plane on a runway getting ready to take off. And as it is about to take off, someone forces it to stop. The problem is the crisis that keeps standing in the way of the plane, but we still harbor hope that it will properly take off.
Many shareholders are still determined to hang on to their shares in the hope of selling them during the reconstruction phase. But for economist Ammar Youssef, the only thing keeping the exchange open is the sheer will of the Syrian regime.
التفسير الوحيد يمكن أن يكون بقرار سياسي، أن البورصة مفتوحة بقرار سياسي ومستمرة بقرار سياسي.
The only reason the stock exchange has stayed open is because of a political decision, not an economic decision. We all know that given the events and the war in Syria, it's absolutely impossible to make profits as the currency is collapsing.
أي أرباح بأي شكل من الأشكال في ظل ارتفاع وانخفاض العملة.
More than 250,000 people have been killed in Syria since 2011, and the country's economy has been left in shambles. The value of the Syrian pound has been divided by 4, and according to an NGO, Syrians have lost 80% of their buying power in 4 years.
Indeed, one of the most depressing things that we've seen. I think nothing speaks more clearly than, when did the stock exchange open?
In just a couple of years before 2011.
2011.
Yeah, in 2009, that's why he was saying it's like this airplane about to go
about to go
get
up
it.
and, yeah.
But in 2011, almost 8 billion pounds were traded. It was half of that this year. And you heard the Syrian currency has been divided by 4 in value. So it's a terrible, terrible economic tragedy. Of course, quarter of a million people dead.
Quarter of a million dead. I mean, everything to do with Syria right now is a terrible tragedy, and no future in sight, as one can see. Daniel, thank you. It's important to notify us, it's important to report these things, but I love that you always bring me depressing things.